One of the primary challenges that manufacturers or anyone who faces when adopting the data mesh is a cultural shift to domain ownership. So a data mesh requires that each domain, so be it production, quality control, logistics, they take full ownership of their data, which may be a big cultural shift because many manufacturing teams, they are used to a centralized IT model where data management is handled by a central department.
Welcome to another episode of Data Strategy Unraveled. I'm your host, Kendra Reed, Principal Data and GenAI Strategy Specialist here at AWS. And today we're going to circle back on a topic that we've had before, and that's data mesh. However, this time around, we're going to talk about how it's been implemented within the manufacturing industry. Now, if you're not in the industry, I definitely still want you to tune in because what you will see that strategy for implementation can also be applied to other industries as well. And the concepts are very similar. Now, to help us with this discussion, I have a good friend, Chandana here. Hey, Chandana, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great, Kendra. Thank you, and thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How about you tell us a little about yourself, what you do here at AWS, and where you're joining us from?
Yeah, I'm a senior solutions architect at AWS. I am based out in Dallas. I've been with AWS for the last 4.5 years, working with large enterprise auto manufacturing customers, guiding them through their digital transformation journey. So I spend most of the time working backwards from the customer challenges, trying to understand their current landscape, their architecture, and work towards shaping their data and platform strategy, developing target architectures that ultimately accelerates their journey towards achieving business value.
Okay. And so, we talked a little bit, prior to this, and you were telling us how you've done a lot of work with customers, especially in the manufacturing space around data mesh. Why don't you tell us a little bit why manufacturers or manufacturing facilities are really starting to leverage data mesh concept for their production lines, for their overall facilities and what they're doing?
Yes, often you hear that, data is termed one of the key enablers, but yet one of the biggest challenges that manufacturing OEMs face as a primary hindrance to innovating faster. Fundamentally, there are three main reasons why they're increasingly starting to leverage the data mesh concept. The first reason is breaking down data silos. So manufacturing facilities, as you can imagine, they generate large volumes of data across the production facilities, so across quality control, logistics, machine reliability, inventory management, and teams struggle with breaking down these data silos, where data is especially spread across different departments and into hundreds to thousands of systems. And again, these will be on different locations, multi-cloud, on-premises, shop floor systems. You can imagine, and this highly fragmented data, it makes it difficult for the teams to access data from these siloed data lakes built on different technology stacks. The second reason you would often find is speed to data discoverability and access, or what we call time to data. So it often starts with being able to find the data that people need, wondering if it exists, is it of good quality, who owns it, how can I get access, what is the process, who do I call? And it can be very complex to facilitate that workflow and enable sharing. And certainly, we hear from some of our customers who say, "Oh, this is very hard. Let's centralize everything." And it may seem like the only way to effectively govern and share data, but it increases friction in trying to get everybody into one way of doing things because a centralized data lake is complex, it is monolithic, and it is slow to change. You have one central team that has to deal with all of the pipelines, and the central data team becomes the bottleneck. And oftentimes they are overloaded with many requests, and everything for them is high priority. And on top of this, they may not have the domain knowledge to create the data product. So oftentimes they depend on the domain domain teams to first understand the domain knowledge, to get the domain knowledge to be able to create the data products. And the less autonomous you are, the less agile you become, making it less efficient to scale within a complex environment, which is the third reason, which is scalability and agility across a complex production environment. And not to forget, centralized data architectures, they can often become costly because you're increasing data duplication as your the data volume and processing demands grow, it often becomes costly. So manufacturing OEMs, they're increasingly turning towards the data mesh concept to address these long-standing challenges. So rather than saying that centralization is the only way path forward, we simply catalog in a central data catalog, which is enabling data discovery and access from these different domains. So basically, data mesh is offering a decentralized, domain-oriented approach that is aligning well with the unique needs of manufacturing environments.
Yeah, and I think you so clearly highlighted a lot of the things that we've talked about before. And what I really like how you ended there with that cataloging piece, that foundation of the governance and understanding where the data is. And it's really more so a construct of how, we're organizing, different units within the company or business, or whatever it may be, of how they're sharing and utilizing data. One of the things I know that comes up a lot is, how does data mesh really start to handle those cross-functional data needs, right? We think about manufacturing, like the intersection of the production with quality control and logistics. Could you talk a little bit about that, how that intersection comes together?
Yes, absolutely. So fundamentally, there are four principles that are enabling the data mesh to handle these cross-functional data needs. So the first principle is domain-driven data ownership. A data mesh design, it organizes itself around data domains. Each data domain owns and operates multiple data products within its own data and technology stack, which is independent from the others. A data domain can represent a domain producer or a data consumer or both. And producers are responsible for creating the data products and for the full life cycle of the data, moving it from the raw format to a form that is suitable for consumption by external parties. As the domain owner starts to create these data products, they try to meet the user where they are. So they make sure that the consumers, they don't have to go transform the data before they can use it in their application. So this is treating data as a product mindset, which is the second principle. Now, the data domain producers, they expose these data products to the rest of the organization by registering them with a central catalog. Here, they choose what to share, how long to share, and how the consumers can interact with it. The point to note is the data is not copied to the central data lake, but it is just cataloged. The ownership still remains with the producer. The third principle is that data mesh advocates for self-service data sharing, wherein business units can come in, they can find the data that they need, and they can make a request. And that request, it gets dispatched to the producer, who can then decide whether or not they grant access. In fact, what access they grant. For example, you can only access this data for 30 days, or you can access this data, but not the portions of it that have highly confidential or sensitive information. And lastly, and also very important, is the fourth principle, which is the data mesh establishes federated governance for interoperability. So they are a set of global rules that are applied to all data products and their interfaces. This is ensuring that we have a healthy and interoperable ecosystem. Now, a domain data set only becomes a data product after it locally and within the domain it grows through the process of quality assurance. But then the domain data owners, they also need to comply with specifications based on a global standard, which is defined by the global federated governance team, and which needs to be automated by the platform. So primarily, you have these four principles that are, enabling how a data mesh can handle the cross-functional data needs by decentralizing domain ownership and providing a framework that is enabling discoverability and access.
Yeah, you so clearly articulated, those four principles and how that intersection, between these different cross-functional needs happen. And I like how you pointed out that while each of these different domains have their own quality and governance mechanisms, there's still also an enterprise governance mechanism as well, right? To kind of ensure that all these products in different ways of interacting is interoperable there with that. Now, you really laid out, what the principles are, data mesh, et cetera. Can you help us with some real world examples of how this has been done, specifically in manufacturing, when it comes to data mesh?
Absolutely. So in 2019, Volkswagen Group and AWS, we formed a strategic partnership to co-develop the digital production platform, or the DPP. This is a platform that we built on AWS for implementing Volkswagen's manufacturing use case applications, and the primary aim being to enhance the production and logistics efficiency by 30%, while also reducing the production costs by the same margin. Now, the DPP was developed to streamline access to data from shop floor devices and from various manufacturing systems by providing standardized interfaces, reusable services and artifacts, making it simpler and easy to build and deploy new applications, primarily like 2 to 3 times faster. However, as applications evolved on the platform, there were some primary challenges. So sharing data across these different applications stored in multiple isolated data lakes, starting with discoverability of available data and facilitating a workflow to request data access. This became highly challenging. The existing methods, they were largely manual, relying on emails and general communication, which not only increased overhead on the teams, but it also varied from one use case to another in terms of data governance. So essentially, all of this led to long lead time in data access, and each use case was taking 3 to 6 months to get access to data, and there was inability to scale use cases due to lack of economies of repetition. And there was lack of control on the plant's most important asset, which is its data. So to address this, we started off by working backwards from the customer via a series of workshops, having the right stakeholders from the customer, including business, involving the top leadership, the plant CIO, the IT leadership, and doing an in-depth discovery to understand what is the business problem to be addressed, what is the impact of not addressing it, what are the expected outcomes we want. So it started off by discovering the problem, ending with the solution of the data mesh. So for solution, we used Amazon Data Zone to build their data mesh to enable the streamlined access across multiple data lakes. So the first step was to identify what are the key domains that we have, namely shop floor, logistics, foundry, and assign domain ownership. So each of these domains are then responsible for creating and managing their own data products. And the key aspect of the solution was to enable these data domain producers to automatically publish their data products to Amazon Data Zone, which was serving as a central data mesh for data discoverability. So once the data is cataloged and published to the data zone domain, it could then be shared with multiple consumer accounts. And the second aspect was to provide a centralized, self-service data platform, but was enabling the discovery and federated governance. So within Amazon Data Zone, we have the data portal, which provided a personalized view for the users to discover, search, and submit requests for data access to the producer. So that then the producers get these requests, they approve or reject the request. Once approved, then the consumer account can, read and further process this data for their own use cases. For the rollout, we started with one pilot plant and then scaled to other plants. We also published a blog post on this. It is titled How Volkswagen Streamlined Access to Data Across Multiple Data Lakes Using Amazon Data Zone. I highly recommend having a look at it. It also has code for automation, which you can reuse.
Yeah, we'll be sure to put that blog in the description below so you can check that out. But I really liked how you highlighted Amazon Data Zone here because our viewers, those that have been watching the channel, we did a video around Amazon Data Zone, some of the capabilities that can provide. But what you've laid out here is really how it enabled Volkswagen Group to be able to build out this mesh ecosystem within their different facilities there. One of the things I also want to talk about is what are some of the common challenges or pitfalls that manufacturers face when looking to adopt data mesh, and how can they think about ways to overcome that?
Yeah. So one of the primary challenges that manufacturers or anyone who faces when adopting the data mesh is a cultural shift to domain ownership. So a data mesh requires that each domain, so be it production, quality control, logistics, they take full ownership of their data, which may be a big cultural shift because many manufacturing teams, they are used to a centralized IT model where data management is handled by a central department. So you would face some amount of resistance. So in order to address that, you need to have a clear value proposition, which you need to communicate in terms of why do we need to make this shift? How is it going to help the business and the organization? And next would be to define a process for data when there was no streamlined process existing before, which involves identifying the data domains and owners, assigning new responsibilities for people, especially data domain admin, data owner, and you need to make sure that people are assigned, who are assigned, they're not just on paper, but available on reality because they already have existing responsibilities. Secondly, you would find there will be a steep learning curve. Not only in technical upskilling, but also process changes, which need to be supported by appropriate training. So along with upskilling existing employees, you may need to hire some data specialists to support your domain teams. You would also face complexity in terms of data integration and interoperability because manufacturing environments, they often have a mix of legacy systems, built decades ago, and you have to integrate that with systems that are built on newer technologies, which makes it challenging to integrate data from different systems and sources into the data mesh. So one way to address it is to try and bring the data out of the legacy system and build the data products outside of the legacy system, which has its own ETL pipelines. Over time, you also need to think about modernizing your legacy systems. There would also be another challenge in terms of data quality and standardization issues because there will be variations in data formats, naming conventions, same data which is named differently in different plants, which again hinder cross-functional data usage. So in order to address that, you need a strong governance framework with very clear guidelines for data quality and standardization. Again, you need to have automated data validation checks, which is ensuring that each of the domain's data is meeting the organization-wide standards. So basically, you need to start small, with an impactful pilot project, to demonstrate the data mesh's value, showcase tangible results, and prioritize areas with the highest potential, and demonstrating early success, to justify further investments and to scale up gradually.
Yeah, what I really liked about what you laid out there was the biggest pieces of building this ecosystem is the people and processes that you have in place, not necessarily tech, but the people and processes, the culture that you're driving, et cetera, which is really key to this overall framework here. Now, as we wrap up here, I want to just make sure that we end on a highlight on those that are really looking to understand how they can get started, right? I think a lot of the concepts that you laid out, while we wanted to talk about manufacturing, I think a lot of what you've laid out here can really be applied to in the industry for those that are looking to get started or leverage this ecosystem. So what will be, some advice that you would have for a manufacturer or just a company that is looking to get started with data mesh as part of their overall data strategy?
Yeah, so primarily start small, right? With a pilot project in a high impact area. Start where in an area which is struggling with time to data access, or somewhere where the benefits of decentralized data can be clearly demonstrated. And having a pilot project, it allows the organization to test the data mesh approach, to evaluate outcomes and refine processes without committing to a full scale implementation. And success in one area, it builds confidence, and it provides a clear business case for scaling the data mesh across the different domains. The second thing is to focus on data as a product mindset. So I would, strongly encourage the domains to treat their data as a product by ensuring that it is high quality, well documented, and easily accessible to other teams. So basically, the data as a product mindset, it promotes better data quality as each domain takes responsibility for making their data valuable and user friendly. And the third thing is to establish strong data governance from the start. So creating any kind of governance policies for data standards, quality metrics, security protocols to ensure consistency and compliance across the domains. The fourth thing, I think you have to invest in training and change management. You need to equip the teams with the skills that are needed for the data mesh through targeted training, and to actively manage this cultural change required for a decentralized data ownership. And lastly, you also need to measure the ROI, return on investment, and track key metrics early on. So you need to define, track metrics, and also report these metrics to the stakeholders. And I mean, it should not be, I think it's very key that you need to measure, to demonstrate tangible benefits of data mesh, which will help to justify any kind of further investment in the data mesh. And again, plan for incremental scaling, because once the pilot proves successful, you can incrementally expand the data mesh to additional domains and gradually scaling up. Rather than just attempting a full scale rollout from the start. I think it will help the organization to learn and adapt, avoiding any pitfalls of a large scale rollout.
Wow. Yeah, Chandana, you really laid out a lot of the key aspects that we talk about on this channel and how you really talked about each of these and how to approach that. I really think that's very helpful for our viewers to see, especially since you've been so active in actually building this out and the things that you've seen be successful. I think there's some really good gems there that viewers can take with them. And we will also be sure to our viewers to include a lot of this information that Chandana has been talking about, the Volkswagen Group, and in the other information that can really be helpful for you starting that journey when it comes to using data mesh as part of your data strategy there. Thank you again, Chandana, for joining us today on Data Strategy Unraveled. And for our viewers, thank you for taking the time to watch, and be sure to look out for our next Data Strategy Unraveled episode. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kendra.